"You're not welcome here anymore. Go die in a dumpster." Those words weren't just shouted at me, they tore through my chest like shrapnel. They came from Melissa, my daughter-in-law, the woman my son loved and trusted, the woman I had welcomed into our family with open arms. Her voice was sharp, filled with a hatred I couldn't recognize, and it was aimed straight at me. I stood there on the porch of the house I had worked decades to pay off, my legs trembling, my heart pounding in my ears. Behind her, the warm glow of the chandelier I had installed with my own hands illuminated the entryway. I remembered standing on a ladder 20 years ago, tightening that fixture while my son, just a boy back then, held the flashlight. That house wasn't just wood and brick. It was memories. My life's work. My son's childhood. And now Melissa stood there, clutching the deed like it was a trophy she had stolen in broad daylight. "Melissa, please," I said, my voice breaking. "This is my home too. I raised David here. I raised him alone. Don't do this." Her eyes, cold and unflinching, locked on me. "Your son left everything to me. The house. The company. The money. Everything. And you're nothing but a burden." Before I could say another word, she shoved a cardboard box into my arms. Inside were a few family photographs, a folded American flag from David's service as a Marine, and my old tools. That was all she left me with, 40 years of sacrifice reduced to a box I could barely hold. The door slammed shut. I heard the locks click, 1, 2, 3. Each sound echoed in my chest like gunfire. I staggered back a step, staring at the door that had closed me out not just of a house, but of my entire world. I looked around. The neighbors' blinds twitched as eyes peeked out, but no one came forward. To them, I was just an old man, Harold Whitman, age 68, the man who had lost his wife decades ago, who raised his son with greasy hands and tired eyes, who gave everything for family. And now I was the man who had lost everything. The autumn wind whipped at my coat as I sat down on the curb, clutching the box of memories. Streetlights flickered above me, and the sound of crickets mixed with the faint hum of passing cars. I should have been inside, surrounded by warmth, pictures of my son on the mantel, and maybe even the laughter of grandchildren. Instead, I was outside, shivering, discarded like yesterday's trash. I stared at the folded flag in the box. My son had earned that flag with his service, with his blood and sweat. He had survived tours overseas, only to die suddenly at home, in his sleep, from a heart attack at just 37. I buried him with tears I thought would never end. And now, 5 days after his funeral, his wife had turned my grief into humiliation. My mind drifted back, uninvited, to all the years I had built this life. When I was 28, I lost my wife, Evelyn, in a car accident. From that moment on, David became my whole world. I worked double shifts at the auto shop, coming home with hands cracked from oil and steel, just to keep food on the table. I never remarried. I never went on vacations. I saved every penny so David could go to college. And when he did, when he started his company and grew it into something worth $10 million, I thought all the sacrifices had finally paid off. I thought we had made it. But now I realized money doesn't protect you from betrayal. Sometimes it buys it. Melissa had always seemed polite. A little cold, maybe, but polite. She was younger than David by almost 10 years, a sharp, ambitious woman with eyes that sparkled when she talked about business, not family. I wanted to believe she loved him. Maybe she did, in her own way. But now, staring at the locked door, I wondered if she had only ever loved what he could give her. I looked up at the stars, whispering to David, "Son, why did you leave me with her? Why didn't you protect me?" My chest tightened, and for a moment I thought my old heart might give out right there on the curb. But then I thought of Evelyn, of David, of everything I had already survived. I wasn't going to die in the street. Not like this. I picked up the box and began to walk. I didn't know where I was going. Maybe the cheap motel down by the interstate, maybe a park bench, maybe nowhere at all. Each step felt heavier than the last, not from the weight of the box but from the weight of betrayal. For 5 days, I drifted like a ghost. I slept in a run-down motel, ate $8 burgers from a greasy diner, and stared at the ceiling, wondering what I had done to deserve this. At night, I replayed Melissa's words in my head. Go die in a dumpster. The cruelty of it burned more than the cold. And then came the letter. On the 5th day, an envelope slid under my motel door. It was from David's lawyer, Mr. Reynolds, summoning me to his office. I almost didn't go. What good would it do? Melissa had already taken everything. The will had been read at the funeral reception. She inherited it all. Everyone knew it. But something in me stirred, a faint spark of defiance. If nothing else, I wanted to look that lawyer in the eye and hear him confirm that my son had left me nothing. Maybe then I could finally accept it. I put on my old suit, the same one I had worn at David's wedding, and took the bus downtown. The city looked different now, grayer somehow, like it too had betrayed me. When I walked into the law office, the secretary gave me a sympathetic look, as if she already knew my story. Mr. Reynolds greeted me with a firm handshake. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes, but a voice that carried authority. Melissa was already there, sitting in a leather chair with her legs crossed, wearing a smug smile. She didn't even acknowledge me. To her, I was already gone. "Mr. Whitman," the lawyer said, adjusting his glasses. "I'm glad you came." "I don't know why I'm here," I muttered. "She got everything." Melissa smirked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Exactly. So let's get this over with. I have a company to run now." But then Mr. Reynolds gave me a strange smile. Not mocking. Not cruel. Almost secretive. "Mr. Whitman," he said slowly, "did you really listen carefully to the will?" Melissa's smirk faltered. Her shoulders stiffened. I blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" The lawyer leaned forward, his voice lowering. "There are details that were overlooked. And what I'm about to reveal changes everything." Melissa's face paled. Her confident mask began to crack. And in that silence, in that charged, breathless moment, I realized my son had left something behind. Something Melissa didn't want me to know. And what the lawyer revealed next would make her collapse to the floor. Mr. Reynolds leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, his eyes flickering between me and Melissa like he was weighing every word. The office smelled faintly of polished oak and old books, the kind of room where secrets were kept for decades before finally being spoken. Melissa shifted uncomfortably, crossing and uncrossing her legs. Her confidence, the same confidence she used to throw me out of my own home, was starting to tremble. "Mr. Whitman," the lawyer began slowly, "I asked if you had truly listened carefully to the will because there are clauses, hidden in plain sight, things most people ignore. But your son was not most people." My breath caught in my throat. "What are you saying?" Melissa snapped, "Don't play games, Reynolds. We already went through the will. I get everything. That's what David wanted." The lawyer's eyes hardened. "That's what you wanted to hear, Mrs. Whitman. But that's not the full truth." The room went silent except for the faint ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. My hands tightened around the armrest of the chair, my knuckles white. "What do you mean?" I whispered. Mr. Reynolds slid open a drawer and pulled out a thick, leather-bound file. He placed it on the desk, turning it toward me. David left instructions. Special instructions. He anticipated conflict. His eyes flicked toward Melissa. He knew there might be trouble. Melissa's lips curled. "This is ridiculous. He loved me. He trusted me. You're just trying to confuse an old man." But I saw it. The tiny bead of sweat forming at her temple. The way her voice rose an octave higher than usual. She was nervous. Mr. Reynolds opened the file. David's company, Whitman Tech Solutions, was not simply handed over to Melissa in the will. He created a trust. And the controlling interest, 51%, was not left to her. The air seemed to vanish from the room. I leaned forward, barely breathing. "Then, who?" I asked. The lawyer's smile was faint, almost reluctant. "To you, Mr. Whitman." "His father." Melissa shot up from her chair. "What?" Her voice cracked like glass. "That's a lie." The lawyer remained calm. "Sit down, Mrs. Whitman. These are David's words, not mine. He wrote that his father built the foundation that allowed him to succeed, and he wanted to ensure his father would always be protected. You, Mrs. Whitman, were given the estate, the cars, and a portion of the wealth. But the company. Control of the company belongs to his father. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. My chest swelled with something I hadn't felt in days. Dignity. Hope. But it was tangled with shock, with disbelief. Melissa's face twisted, her voice trembling with fury. That company is mine. I've been running things since he died. You can't just hand it over to some old mechanic. I flinched at the words, but Reynolds was unshaken. It's already done. The paperwork is filed. Legally, Mr. Whitman is the majority shareholder. Effective immediately. Melissa's hands shook as she pointed at me. You don't know how to run a company. You'll ruin everything. David wanted me to. Reynolds cut her off sharply. David wanted his father to be safe. That is clear. Her voice broke, and for the first time since David's funeral, I saw her mask slip. Tears welled in her eyes, though whether from grief or rage, I couldn't tell. She dropped back into her chair, her face pale. I sat there, silent, my mind spinning. My son, he had thought of me. He had protected me even in death. I wasn't discarded. I wasn't forgotten. He had left me something greater than money or a house. He had left me control. A chance to stand tall again. Melissa finally whispered, her voice trembling, "This can't be happening." But it was. Mr. Reynolds slid a stack of papers across the desk. "Mr. Whitman, all that's needed is your signature. Once signed, you'll officially control the majority stake. You'll have authority over board decisions, company direction, and any financial changes." My hand hovered over the pen. For a moment, fear clutched me. What did I know about running a multimillion-dollar tech company? I was a mechanic. I fixed carburetors and transmissions, not software and systems. But then I thought about Melissa's words. Go die in a dumpster. I thought about sitting on that curb in the cold, holding nothing but a box of memories. And I knew I couldn't walk away. I picked up the pen. My hand trembled, but my heart was steady. I signed. The sound of the pen scratching across the page was like thunder in my ears. Final. Powerful. Melissa leapt to her feet. "You'll regret this, old man. You think you've won? You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." She stormed out of the office, the door slamming so hard the glass rattled in its frame. Silence settled again. Mr. Reynolds studied me, his expression softening. "Your son trusted you. He knew you might not feel ready, but he believed you had more strength than you realize." I swallowed hard, staring at the papers. My son had left me more than ownership. He had left me a responsibility, a chance to honor him, a chance to fight back. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Melissa wasn't going to walk away quietly. She had already shown what she was capable of. And now, with millions on the line, she would come for me with everything she had. I stood, tucking the papers into my coat. My knees ached, my back stiff, but I felt taller than I had in years. As I walked out of the office and into the crisp autumn air, I knew one thing for certain. This fight wasn't just about money. It was about dignity, about legacy, about proving that even an old man could rise when everyone expected him to fall. I didn't have answers yet. I didn't know how to run a company. But I had something stronger than Melissa's greed. I had my son's trust. And I wasn't about to waste it. As I turned the corner onto the busy street, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. The caller ID made my blood run cold. It was Melissa. And when I answered, her voice was low, venomous, and shaking with rage. "You may have the company on paper, Harold," she hissed, "but you'll never truly own it. I'll destroy you before I let you take what's mine." The line went dead. My grip tightened around the phone. For the first time in days, a fire lit in my chest. She thought I was weak. She thought I would crumble. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. The morning after I signed those papers, I stood in front of the glass skyscraper that bore my son's name, Whitman Tech Solutions. The sun reflected off the mirrored windows, blinding me for a moment. It felt surreal. Just yesterday, I was sitting in a run-down motel, unsure if I'd even eat dinner. And now, I was about to walk into a multimillion-dollar company. My company. But as I stood there, gripping the strap of my worn leather bag. I felt like a fraud. What business did a 68-year-old auto mechanic have running a tech empire? I didn't even know how to send a group email. I thought of David, of how proud he was the day he moved into this building, calling me from the top floor, his voice brimming with excitement. "Dad, I built this from nothing. I couldn't have done it without you." That memory steadied me. I wasn't here to be perfect. I was here because my son had trusted me to protect his legacy. Inside, the lobby gleamed with marble floors and modern artwork. Young employees in sharp suits bustled past, talking on Bluetooth headsets, their eyes flicking toward me with curiosity. I could feel their questions. Who's the old man? What's he doing here? At the reception desk, a young woman with bright red hair looked up, startled. "Sir, can I help you?" I cleared my throat. "Yes. My name is Harold Whitman. I'm here to see the board." Her eyes widened. She straightened instantly, her voice respectful now. "Of course, Mr. Whitman. Right this way." The elevator ride felt endless. My heart pounded with every floor we passed. When the doors finally opened, I stepped into the top-level conference room. They were all waiting. A long mahogany table stretched across the room, surrounded by executives in expensive suits. I recognized a few faces from photographs David had shown me: his chief financial officer, his head of operations, his lead developer. But at the far end of the table, sitting tall with her arms crossed, was Melissa. Her eyes narrowed as I entered, her lips curling into a smile that wasn't really a smile at all. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said smoothly, "I present to you our new majority shareholder, my father-in-law." The room erupted in murmurs. I felt the heat of their stares, a mix of disbelief and skepticism. One man, a tall, silver-haired executive, cleared his throat. "With all due respect, Mr. Whitman, what experience do you have in running a company of this scale?" I swallowed hard. "None. I was a mechanic. For 40 years. A ripple of laughter spread across the room. Melissa smirked, clearly enjoying the spectacle. "But," I continued, my voice firmer now, "I know what it means to build something with your own two hands. I know what sacrifice looks like. And I know my son trusted me enough to leave me this responsibility. That should mean something to all of you." The laughter died, replaced with silence. A few of the younger executives looked at me with something resembling respect. But Melissa's glare could have cut glass. "We'll see how long that lasts," she muttered under her breath. The meeting began, and for the next hour I was drowned in jargon I barely understood, terms like equity valuation, cloud infrastructure, market projections. My head spun. I scribbled notes furiously, though half the time I wasn't even sure what I was writing. Melissa seized every opportunity to humiliate me. "Mr. Whitman," she said at one point, her voice dripping with mock politeness, "perhaps you'd like to share your insights on the scalability of our new AI platform?" The room turned to me expectantly. My throat went dry. I'm still learning," I admitted. She smiled sweetly, twisting the knife. "Of course. You'll need a lot of time to catch up. In the meantime, why don't you let the professionals handle things?" Laughter erupted again, sharper this time. My face burned. By the end of the meeting, I felt smaller than I had in years. I shuffled out of the room, humiliated, my confidence cracked. But then, as the board members dispersed, a young man approached me. He couldn't have been more than 30, with messy dark hair and nervous eyes. "Mr. Whitman," he said softly, "my name's Ethan Colestar. I was David's lead developer. He talked about you a lot." I blinked. "He did." Ethan nodded. "He said you were the reason he never gave up. That no matter how bad things got, you always pushed through. He respected you more than anyone." Emotion surged in my chest. For the first time since walking into that building, I didn't feel completely out of place. Ethan glanced around, lowering his voice. "Listen, I know Melissa. She's going to do everything she can to undermine you. But if you ever need help, I've got your back." I gripped his shoulder, my voice rough. "Thank you, son. That means more than you know." That night, back in the motel, I sat at the small desk with Ethan's business card in front of me. For the first time since David's death, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't fighting alone. But my relief was short-lived. Around midnight, I heard a knock at the motel door. 3 sharp raps. I froze. Slowly, I opened it. A brown envelope lay on the ground. No one in sight. I picked it up, my hands trembling. Inside were photographs. Photographs of me. Walking into the company. Sitting in the boardroom. Eating alone at the diner. Every move I had made since signing the papers, documented in grainy black and white. And at the bottom, a single note written in red ink. You don't belong here. Leave now, or next time it won't just be pictures. My stomach dropped. My fingers went numb. This wasn't just about business anymore. Melissa wasn't going to fight fair. She was going to destroy me, no matter what it took. The photographs lay scattered across the motel desk, their black and white shadows glaring back at me. Each one was a reminder that I wasn't just out of my depth, I was being hunted. There I was, caught mid-step outside the company building. Another shot of me sipping coffee alone at the diner. And then one that made my blood freeze, me standing at David's grave, my hand resting on the headstone. Whoever had taken these pictures had been close. Too close. The red ink note trembled in my fingers. You don't belong here. Leave now, or next time it won't just be pictures. My stomach knotted. I'd been threatened before. Working in a rough neighborhood auto shop taught me what angry people were capable of, but this was different. This wasn't about money for a repair job. This was about power. Millions of dollars. Legacy. Melissa. I could almost hear her voice in my head, sharp and venomous. You'll regret this, old man. Part of me wanted to pack up and leave. Walk away before things got worse. But then I looked at the folded flag on the nightstand, the one I kept with me since Melissa had thrown me out. David's flag. His legacy. He trusted me. I couldn't run. The next morning, I carried the envelope straight to Mr. Reynolds. The lawyer's office was quiet, the blinds drawn against the sun. He studied the photographs with a grim expression. "This is serious, Harold," he said finally. "Melissa is desperate. If she's resorting to intimidation, it means she knows you're a real threat." I swallowed. What am I supposed to do? I'm not a fighter. I'm not some corporate shark. I'm just me. Reynolds leaned forward, his voice steady. "That's exactly why David trusted you. You're not greedy. You're not manipulative. You're the only person who would protect his company from being devoured. But you can't do it alone. You'll need allies." I thought of Ethan, the young developer who had offered his help. "I might have one." Reynolds nodded. "Good. Use him. And Harold, be careful. If Melissa hired someone to follow you, she might be willing to go further." I left the office with the photographs shoved deep into my coat pocket, my heart heavier than ever. Back at Whitman Tech, Melissa wasted no time making her move. The moment I stepped into the boardroom, she pounced. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said sweetly, "I have some unfortunate news. Our new majority shareholder has been struggling to adapt. Yesterday he asked me how to open a PDF file." Laughter rippled through the room. My face flushed. I wanted to crawl under the table. Melissa smirked. "We all respect David, and of course, we respect his father. But perhaps Mr. Whitman's time would be better spent in retirement, where he belongs." She turned to the others, her voice syrupy. "I propose we consider an emergency clause to appoint an interim director. For the good of the company." Whispers filled the air. Heads nodded. My throat tightened. She was trying to push me out before I had even started. But then Ethan spoke up. "Actually," he said firmly, "David was clear in his will. Control goes to his father. And if we're going to respect David's legacy, then we need to give Mr. Whitman the chance to lead." The room went quiet. Melissa's eyes narrowed. I looked at Ethan, gratitude swelling in my chest. He didn't have to do that, but he did. Melissa forced a smile. "Of course. We'll give him time." But I saw the rage burning in her eyes. This wasn't over. After the meeting, Ethan caught up with me in the hallway. "She's going to keep trying to push you out. You need to be ready." "Ready how?" I asked. He hesitated. There are things going on in this company you don't know about. Things David was starting to uncover before he died. Melissa doesn't just want control, she wants to bury the truth. A chill ran through me. What truth? Ethan glanced around nervously. Not here. Meet me tonight, after work. There's something I need to show you. That night, we met in a dimly lit coffee shop on the edge of town. Ethan slid a folder across the table. Inside were spreadsheets, invoices, and emails. David found irregularities, Ethan whispered. Large sums of money being funneled out of the company into shell accounts. At first, he thought it was a clerical error. But then he realized Melissa was involved. I scanned the papers, my heart pounding. Are you saying she was stealing from her own husband's company? Ethan nodded. Millions. And she was covering it up. David was going to confront her, but then he died. The weight of his words sank in. David, my son, dead at 37. I had never questioned it. The doctors said it was a heart attack. Sudden. Tragic. But now, for the first time, doubt crept in. What if it wasn't just bad luck? What if Melissa had a hand in it? My chest tightened, rage bubbling beneath my skin. She had taken my home, humiliated me, threatened me. And now, maybe she had taken my son too. I clenched my fists. We need proof. Solid proof. Ethan nodded. I'll help you find it. But you need to be careful. If she realizes we're digging, she won't just sit back. As I walked back to the motel that night, the city lights blurred in my tears. I whispered to the empty streets, David, if she did this to you, I swear I'll make it right. But when I reached my room, the door was slightly ajar. My stomach dropped. I pushed it open slowly. The box of photographs was gone. The folded flag was on the floor, trampled, dirt smeared across the fabric. And on the wall, scrawled in red spray paint, were 3 chilling words. You're next, old man. My knees nearly buckled. I grabbed the flag, clutching it to my chest, tears burning in my eyes. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. This was war. And for the first time in my life, I realized I couldn't just endure. I couldn't just survive. I had to fight back. I didn't sleep that night. The words sprayed across the wall seared into my mind, burning hotter every time I replayed them. You're next, old man. My hands shook as I folded the flag again, carefully brushing off the dirt. I held it against my chest like a shield, like if I let go, I'd lose David all over again. The fear was real, thick in my lungs, but underneath it, something stronger was stirring. I was angry. Melissa thought she could scare me into silence. She thought I'd pack up, disappear, and leave her free to rot my son's company from the inside out. Maybe that's what the old Harold would have done. The man who used to avoid conflict, who'd rather walk away than fight. But not anymore. I had lost my wife. I had lost my home. I had lost my son. What else was there left to take from me? If Melissa wanted a war, she had just chosen the wrong old man. The next morning, I met Ethan in the parking garage of Whitman Tech. He saw the dark circles under my eyes and the faint tremor in my hands. What happened? He asked. They broke into my room, took the photos, left me a message. His jaw tightened. Melissa's escalating. She must know we're close. I shook my head. No. She thinks I'm weak. That's her mistake. Ethan looked at me differently then, not with pity, but with something like respect. I took a deep breath. You said David found proof she was stealing. If we can expose her, she's finished. But we need more than spreadsheets. We need undeniable evidence. Ethan nodded slowly. There's a storage drive. David kept backups, documents, recordings, even personal notes. He didn't trust anyone with it. But I think I know where it is. Where? In his old office. Melissa had it sealed after his death, but she didn't clear everything out. If we can get inside, then we'll find what we need. Breaking into my own son's office felt wrong. But watching Melissa sit at the head of the boardroom table while the vultures circled felt worse. We waited until evening, when most employees had gone home. Ethan swiped us in with his badge, and together we slipped through the quiet halls. Every sound echoed, the hum of the vents, the creak of a door, the clicking of my own shoes against the marble. When we reached David's office, the door loomed like a locked vault. Ethan worked quickly, tapping at the keypad with a small device he'd smuggled from IT. My heart thudded in my chest with every passing second. Then, beep. The lock clicked open. Inside, the air was stale, as though time itself had been frozen since the day David died. His jacket still hung on the back of his chair. A family photo, me, him, and his mother from years ago, sat on the desk. My throat tightened. Ethan moved quickly, pulling open drawers, scanning the bookshelves. "He always hid things in plain sight," he murmured. I wandered the room, my hand brushing over the photo. My boy. I'd failed him so many times, but maybe this fight, was how I could finally make it right. "Got it," Ethan whispered. He held up a slim black drive, tucked inside a hollowed-out copy of *The Art of War. My stomach clenched at the irony. We didn't even get the chance to celebrate. The door swung open. Melissa stood there, her heels clicking against the floor, her eyes like daggers. Behind her were two men in suits, broad-shouldered and stone-faced. "Well," she said coolly, "isn't this adorable? The old man and the errand boy, playing detective." I froze. My hand instinctively tightened around the drive. Melissa's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You think you can dig through David's office, snoop through files, and outsmart me? Let me be very clear, Harold, this isn't your world. You don't belong here. And if you keep meddling, you won't live long enough to regret it." One of the men stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. Ethan whispered, "Harold, give me the drive." For a split second, I hesitated. If Melissa got her hands on it now, everything was over. But if I tried to fight, we'd both end up on the floor. Instead, I did something reckless. I slipped the drive into the family photo frame on the desk, snapping it shut before Melissa noticed. Then, slowly, I handed her my empty hands. "You want to scare me?" I said, my voice trembling but firm. "Go ahead. But you'll never erase David. You'll never erase what he built." Her smile faltered. Just for a second. Then she leaned in close, her perfume suffocating, her words like ice. "You're a stubborn old fool. And stubborn fools don't last long in my world." She turned sharply, motioning for her men to follow. "Let them go," she ordered coldly. "For now." The door slammed behind her. Ethan let out a shaky breath. That was way too close. I reached for the frame and pulled the drive free. My hands were shaking, but my heart burned with determination. "We've got it," I said. "Now let's use it." That night, back in the motel, we plugged the drive into Ethan's laptop. File after file filled the screen, financial records, bank transfers, emails. But one folder stopped us cold. David, personal notes. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were audio recordings, labeled by date. We played the first one. David's voice filled the room. My son's voice. Strong, calm, but with a hint of unease. "If anything happens to me," he said, "I need someone to know the truth. Melissa is siphoning money from the company. I've tracked over $10 million in offshore accounts. I confronted her once already. She denied it, but I could see the fear in her eyes. I don't know how far she'll go to protect herself. If I'm gone, please, don't let her destroy everything I built." My hands covered my mouth. Tears blurred my vision. Ethan whispered, "He knew. He knew she might." I couldn't finish the thought. Couldn't bear to let the words out. But the implication was clear. Melissa hadn't just stolen money. She had stolen my son's life. Grief and rage twisted inside me like a storm. I clenched the edge of the table until my knuckles whitened. "No more running," I said hoarsely. "No more letting her win. She took everything from me. Now, I'm going to take everything from her." Ethan's eyes widened at the steel in my voice. For the first time, I wasn't just enduring. I was ready to fight. But even as determination coursed through me, a new dread settled in my gut. Melissa would stop at nothing to protect her empire. And now that we had proof, she wouldn't just threaten me. She'd come for us. 2 days later, I stood at the head of the boardroom table. For the first time, I wasn't shrinking under the weight of their stares. I wasn't the frail old man Melissa wanted them to see. I called this meeting, I said, my voice steady, because there are truths you all deserve to know. David built this company with integrity. He believed in honesty, in accountability. And those values have been betrayed. Melissa's eyes flashed, but I pressed on. In the coming days, I'll be releasing documents and recordings, evidence that proves millions of dollars were stolen from this company. Evidence that points directly to Melissa Whitman. Gasps erupted around the table. Melissa slammed her hand down. This is slander. Baseless accusations from a senile old man desperate for attention. But I didn't flinch. For the first time, I felt stronger than her. Then let the truth decide, I said calmly. Because I won't stop until David's voice is heard. And with that, I walked out of the room. Behind me, the board erupted into chaos. That night, as I left the building, a black car idled at the curb. Its tinted windows glared like dark eyes. My pulse quickened. Then the door opened, and a voice called out, "Mr. Whitman, get in. We need to talk." I froze. This wasn't Melissa. This was someone else. Someone I hadn't seen coming. And I had no idea if they were friend or foe. The black car idled under the dim glow of the streetlight, its engine purring low like a predator waiting to strike. I froze on the sidewalk, clutching the strap of my worn leather bag where David's drive was hidden. My pulse hammered in my throat. Then the back door swung open. "Mr. Whitman," a man's voice called. Calm, steady, but with an edge of command. "Please, get in. We don't have much time." I hesitated. Every bone in my body screamed to turn and run. But there was something about his tone, urgent, but not threatening. Slowly, I leaned down. Inside sat a man in his late 40s, sharply dressed in a gray suit, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed. He looked at me with piercing blue eyes, not unkind, but sharp enough to slice through excuses. "My name is Daniel Carter," he said. "I worked with your son." My breath caught. "With David." He nodded once. "I was his corporate lawyer." Quietly. "He trusted me when he stopped trusting the others. And I believe he left something behind for you. Something Melissa doesn't know about." I slid into the seat, the door shutting behind me with a heavy thud. "Why should I trust you?" I asked. "Because," Daniel said, leaning forward, "your daughter-in-law is more dangerous than you think. And if you keep walking into this fight blind, she'll eat you alive." As the car pulled away, Daniel explained, "David came to me months before his death. He suspected Melissa was not only laundering money but also colluding with a competitor. He was scared. Said if anything happened, I'd know what to do." He handed me a slim envelope. Inside was a notarized letter in David's handwriting. My chest tightened as I read the first line. "If you're reading this, Dad, it means I was right. Melissa is not who she seems." The words blurred through my tears. My son's voice reached me from beyond the grave, guiding me, warning me. "David wanted you protected," Daniel said softly. "But he also wanted Melissa exposed. He believed you were stronger than you gave yourself credit for." I shook my head, my voice breaking. "I'm just an old man." Daniel's gaze hardened. "You're a father. That makes you dangerous. Don't underestimate that." Back at the motel, Ethan paced the room while I shared everything Daniel had told me. His hands moved nervously, his voice rising. "Harold, this is bigger than we thought. Offshore accounts, corporate rivals, embezzlement. Melissa isn't just greedy, she's tied herself to people who won't hesitate to silence anyone in the way." "I know," I said, gripping the envelope. "But that doesn't mean we stop. It means we move smarter." Ethan stopped pacing and looked at me, really looked. "You're serious? You're actually going to fight her head-on?" "For David," I said. "For the life she stole. For every night I sat alone, wondering if I failed him. I won't fail him again." The next step came faster than I expected. 2 nights later, Ethan and I snuck into a downtown warehouse Daniel had tipped us off about. It belonged to one of Melissa's consulting firms, a shell company David had flagged in his files. The place was dimly lit, filled with crates stamped with foreign labels. Inside, documents were piled high: shipping records, invoices, wire transfers. Proof. We worked fast, snapping photos with Ethan's phone, stuffing papers into a duffel bag. Every second felt like a countdown. Then the sound of footsteps echoed down the concrete hall. We ducked behind a stack of crates as two men in black suits walked in, speaking in low voices. Melissa said to clear it out. "Whitman's old man is sniffing too close." My stomach dropped. They knew. Ethan's grip on my arm was iron. "We need to get out. Now." But as we turned, my bag brushed a crate, knocking over a metal rod. The clang echoed like a gunshot. The men whipped around. "Hey!" We bolted. The chase was a blur. My old legs screamed as we tore down corridors, the men shouting behind us. Ethan shoved open a side door, and we stumbled into the night, the bitter air cutting my lungs. A car screeched around the corner. Daniel's. "Get in!" he yelled. We dove inside as headlights blazed behind us. Daniel hit the gas, and the warehouse shrank in the rearview mirror. "You weren't supposed to get caught," Daniel muttered through gritted teeth. "Yeah, well," I panted, "I'm not exactly built for spy games." But I clutched the duffel tight against my chest. Proof. Real, tangible proof. The next morning, the news broke. Melissa, standing in front of the cameras, her crocodile tears on full display. "My father-in-law," she said, her voice trembling, "has been harassing me since David's tragic death. He's unstable. He's been breaking into offices, spreading lies, endangering employees. I beg you, please respect my family's privacy." I watched the broadcast on the motel TV, my fists clenched. She was painting me as the villain. And the worst part? People believed her. The phone buzzed with threats. Anonymous cars sat too long across the street. I was becoming a target, not just in her world, but in mine. Ethan slammed the remote down. "She's winning the public. If we don't act fast, you'll be arrested, or worse." I looked at the duffel. At the drive. At David's words in that recording. "No," I said quietly. "She's not winning. Not yet." That night, Daniel laid out the plan. "You want Melissa taken down? It has to happen in court. Evidence, witnesses, a case the DA can't ignore. We'll need every document, every recording, every scrap of proof David left. If we move too soon, she'll wriggle free. If we move too late, she'll bury us." "Then we move now," I said. Daniel studied me. "You're not the same man David described when he first came to me. He said you doubted yourself. That you'd never fight." I met his eyes, my voice firm. "Grief changes a man. But love changes him more." A week later, Ethan and I sat in the back of a courtroom, our evidence packed into boxes. Melissa swept in with her attorneys, radiating arrogance. She didn't even glance my way. The judge called the case. Daniel stood at the front, his voice steady. "Your Honor, we are here today to prove systematic fraud, embezzlement, and corporate sabotage orchestrated by Melissa Whitman. And we have the evidence." The courtroom buzzed. Cameras clicked. Melissa's confident smile finally cracked. That night, I returned to the motel alone, exhausted but hopeful. For the first time, I could almost hear David's voice in my ear, telling me he was proud. But when I opened the door, the smell of gasoline hit me. And then I saw it. The duffel bag. The photos. The laptop. All of it, burning. The flames danced high, eating everything we'd fought for. On the table, a single note lay untouched, the paper curling at the edges from the heat. "This is your last warning, old man." My knees buckled. The fire crackled louder, hotter. Melissa wasn't scared. She was furious. And she was ready to kill. The motel room was an inferno. Flames licked the curtains, smoke clawed at my lungs, and the duffel bag, the evidence that could bring Melissa down, was nothing but glowing ash. My throat burned as I stumbled back, covering my mouth with my sleeve. But it wasn't the fire that broke me. It was the note. "This is your last warning, old man." Melissa wasn't bluffing anymore. She wasn't threatening. She was declaring war. I kicked the table aside and grabbed the framed photo of David I'd carried from place to place. I tucked it under my arm and lunged out the door as the flames consumed everything behind me. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The cold night air hit me like a slap, and I collapsed on the curb, coughing, my chest heaving. People gathered, pointing, whispering. To them, I was just a broken man watching his last shelter burn. But inside me, a new fire burned hotter than the flames I'd escaped. She could destroy my things. She could smear my name. She could threaten my life. But she could not silence the truth. The next morning, I sat across from Ethan and Daniel at a diner on the edge of town, my clothes still smelling faintly of smoke. The waitress poured coffee into chipped mugs, the steam curling between us. "She torched it all," I said hoarsely. "Every file, every photo. Everything we had." Ethan slammed his fist against the table. "We're screwed." Daniel, however, leaned back, calm, measured. "Not everything. Remember the drive? Did she get that?" I froze. The drive, the one I'd hidden inside David's old photo frame during the office break-in. I'd nearly forgotten it in the chaos. I reached into my bag and pulled it out, the black metal cool against my palm. "She didn't." Ethan let out a shaky laugh. "Then we still have a chance." Daniel's eyes sharpened. "That's not just a chance. That's a weapon. But it's only as strong as the way we use it. If we dump it online, Melissa will spin it. If we hand it to the DA quietly, she'll bribe her way out. We need to make it undeniable, public, irreversible." "How?" I asked. Daniel sipped his coffee, his voice low. "By bringing it to the board of directors, live." 2 days later, the boardroom buzzed with tension. Melissa sat at the head of the table, polished and perfect in a crimson suit, her lawyers flanking her. I stood at the other end, my hands trembling as I plugged the drive into the projector. The room dimmed, the screen lit up, and David's voice filled the space. "If anything happens to me," he said, his voice calm but haunting, "Melissa is responsible for stealing from this company. I've tracked millions missing. I fear she won't stop until everything, and everyone, who stands in her way is gone." Gasps rippled across the room. Board members exchanged frantic looks. Melissa shot to her feet, her mask cracking. "This is fake. Do you hear me? Fake." But the next file played, bank records, transactions, offshore accounts, all under her name. The board erupted in chaos. Some demanded explanations. Others whispered about lawsuits, indictments, criminal charges. Melissa's face twisted in fury. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "You think this makes you a hero, old man? You've just signed your death warrant." Security stepped forward, but not to me, to her. The board chair's voice cut through the noise. "Mrs. Whitman, until further notice, you are suspended from all duties pending investigation." Her mouth opened and closed, rage boiling behind her eyes. For the first time, she was losing. And she knew it. But the victory was short-lived. That night, as Ethan drove me back to the motel, headlights suddenly flared in the rearview mirror. A black SUV swerved, ramming us from behind. Ethan cursed, gripping the wheel as sparks flew. "They're trying to kill us," he shouted. The SUV slammed us again, harder this time. The car fishtailed. I clutched the dashboard, my heart pounding. "Drive!" I yelled. We careened down a side street, tires screeching, the SUV thundering after us. At the last second, Ethan jerked the wheel, sending us crashing into an abandoned lot. The SUV skidded to a stop yards away. The driver's door opened. Melissa stepped out. Her hair was wild, her suit wrinkled, her eyes burning with unhinged fury. In her hand, a gun gleamed under the streetlight. "Get out!" she screamed. "Get out!" Ethan froze. I pushed the door open slowly, my legs trembling as I stepped onto the gravel. Melissa's hands shook as she aimed the gun at me. "You ruined everything. My life, my future, my plans. You think you can take this from me? You think your pathetic old man revenge means anything?" I lifted my hands. "This isn't about me. It's about David. He saw you for who you are. And now the world does too. Her face twisted. She cocked the gun. For a heartbeat, I thought it was over. Then Ethan moved. He grabbed a rock from the ground and hurled it with all his strength. It struck Melissa's wrist, and the gun clattered to the pavement. I lunged forward, tackling the weapon before she could. My knees screamed with pain, but I held it, clutching it tight. Melissa shrieked, her voice raw, animalistic. "I'll kill you both." But the wail of sirens cut her off. Red and blue lights flooded the lot. Daniel's car screeched to a halt behind the cruisers. He jumped out, shouting to the officers. "There she is. Melissa Whitman, fraud, embezzlement, attempted murder." The officers moved fast. Melissa thrashed and cursed as they wrestled her into handcuffs. Her eyes locked on me one last time, filled with venom. "This isn't over, Harold. You hear me? It's never over." But the slam of the cruiser door swallowed her words. Back at the station, I gave my statement. Every detail of the threats, the fire, the chase. Ethan backed me up. Daniel handed over the evidence drive. By morning, the headlines blared. Melissa Whitman arrested for fraud, embezzlement, attempted murder. I sat on a bench outside the courthouse, the winter sun weak but warm on my face. For the first time in months, I let myself breathe. David's voice echoed in my memory, steady, hopeful. "Dad, don't let her destroy what I built." I whispered to the wind, "I didn't, son. I didn't." But even as peace settled over me, a gnawing thought remained. Melissa was behind bars. But the rivals she worked with, the ones David feared, were still out there. And something told me they weren't done with me yet. The courthouse steps were cold beneath me, but the weight lifting off my shoulders almost made me forget the ache in my bones. Melissa was finally in handcuffs. The city could see her for what she was. For the first time since David's funeral, I thought maybe I could rest. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. David hadn't just whispered about Melissa. In his recordings, he'd hinted at others, partners, shadow investors, people with money and power far beyond her. Melissa wasn't the mastermind. She was a weapon. And weapons are always owned by someone. That night, Daniel came to my motel room. He didn't bother with pleasantries. He tossed a folder onto the bed, his jaw tight. "They're already moving," he said. "Melissa's people. Lawyers, lobbyists, faceless names in offshore accounts. The drive gave us a piece of the puzzle, but the rest," he hesitated. "The rest is buried deep." Ethan, sitting by the window, frowned. "So what, you're saying Melissa was just the tip?" Daniel nodded. "Exactly. There are men higher up. The kind who never step into the spotlight, who'll burn the whole city before letting us expose them." I leaned forward, my hands gripping my knees. "David knew, didn't he?" Daniel's silence was answer enough. My chest tightened. My boy had died not just because of her, but because he'd gotten too close to the real monsters. The next morning, I walked through the cemetery. The air was sharp, each breath laced with frost. I stopped at David's grave, brushing the snow from his name. "I got her," I whispered. "But it's not enough, is it? You wanted the whole truth out there. Not just one piece." I closed my eyes, and for a moment, I could almost hear him. "Don't stop now, Dad. You're closer than ever." Later that week, Daniel arranged a meeting. Not in an office, not in a diner, but in a parking garage downtown, the kind of place where secrets thrived. A man waited there, his coat collar turned up, his face shadowed. When he spoke, his voice was smooth, practiced. "You're Harold Whitman." "And you are?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "Call me Carter. I worked with your son." Quietly. Daniel stepped closer. "You can trust him. He's one of the good ones." Carter handed me a flash drive. "David sent this to me weeks before he died. Told me if anything happened, to get it to you. I couldn't, until now." My hands shook as I took it. "What's on it?" Carter's eyes darkened. "Names. Dates. Transactions. Proof that Melissa wasn't acting alone. There's a network. Politicians, judges, corporations. She was their front, but the real players are untouchable." I clenched my jaw. No one's untouchable. Carter studied me. You've already risked everything. Go after them, and you won't just be avenging your son, you'll be declaring war on men who think they own the world. I looked at Daniel, then Ethan. Both waited for my answer. And I knew. War had already been declared the moment they killed David. We worked for weeks, sleepless nights hunched over glowing screens, piecing together the puzzle. The drive revealed offshore accounts, hidden meetings, bribes spanning from City Hall to Washington. Every thread we pulled led to another knot, another powerful man who thought his money made him invincible. The deeper we went, the clearer it became. Melissa wasn't lying when she said it was bigger than me. Bigger than David. But with every discovery, the danger grew. Strange cars idled outside my motel. Phones clicked when we answered. One night, Ethan's tires were slashed. Another night, Daniel's apartment was broken into. They wanted to scare us. But fear only sharpened my resolve. The final break came unexpectedly. Ethan, combing through encrypted files, uncovered a scheduled meeting. One of the key men pulling strings was coming into the city for a fundraiser. In reality, it was a laundering operation. Daniel looked at me. This is our shot. Catch him red-handed, and we expose everything. Carter secured hidden cameras, microphones, everything we needed. All that was left was walking into the lion's den. The ballroom gleamed with chandeliers and silk curtains, a shrine to wealth and corruption. Men in tailored suits sipped champagne, women draped in jewels laughed at jokes that weren't funny. And there, at the center, was Charles Vance, a senator, a name David had mentioned in whispers. He was tall, silver-haired, his smile sharp as a blade. As I watched him shake hands and accept envelopes, bile rose in my throat. This was the man who had bankrolled Melissa. This was the man who thought he could erase my son. Carter's voice buzzed in my earpiece. We've got him. Cameras rolling. Just keep him talking. I squared my shoulders and stepped forward. Vance noticed me instantly. His smile faltered. Harold Whitman. I was wondering when you'd crawl out of the shadows. Don't flatter yourself, I said evenly. I'm here for David. And for every dollar you stole, every life you destroyed. His expression didn't change, but his eyes, cold, calculating, narrowed. Careful, old man. You're poking at something far larger than your grief. Larger, maybe, I said, my voice steady. But not stronger. Carter signaled from across the room. We had him. Every word, every transaction, caught on tape. For a moment, I thought it was done. Then Vance leaned closer, his breath hot against my ear. Do you really think this ends with me? For every man you drag down, 3 more will rise. You can't kill the system. I met his gaze. Maybe not. But I can make sure the world sees it for what it is. He chuckled, low and menacing. Then I'll make sure the world never sees you again. He raised his hand, subtle, a signal. 2 men in black suits moved toward me. But before they reached me, the ballroom doors burst open. Reporters swarmed in, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. Behind them, police. Daniel's voice thundered across the room. Ladies and gentlemen, the party's over. The look on Vance's face, shock, fury, disbelief, was worth every sleepless night, every scar. The cameras caught everything. The bribes, the threats, the money exchanging hands. This time, there would be no cover-up. Hours later, back in the cold light of dawn, I sat on a bench overlooking the city. Ethan dropped beside me, exhausted but grinning. We did it, he said. Daniel joined us, holding a newspaper hot off the press. The headline screamed. Senator Charles Vance exposed in massive fraud scandal. Ties to Melissa Whitman uncovered. I traced the words with my finger. My chest ached, but it wasn't grief this time. It was relief. David, I whispered. We did it. Weeks later, Melissa stood trial. Vance, too. One by one, their allies fell. Not all of them, but enough to crack the facade. I visited David's grave again, this time with Ethan and Daniel beside me. I laid a single white rose on the stone. You were right, son. It was bigger than her. But it's over now. They'll never silence you. The wind carried the faintest whisper through the trees, and for the first time since he'd been taken from me, I felt something close to peace. Not because I'd won, but because I'd kept my promise. As we left the cemetery, Daniel clapped a hand on my shoulder. "What will you do now?" I thought of the years I'd lost, the nights I'd wasted in grief. Then I thought of the fire in David's eyes, the courage that had driven him. "I'll live," I said simply. "For him. For the truth." Ethan smiled. "And if another monster crawls out of the shadows?" I managed a small smile of my own. "Then they'll learn the same thing Melissa and Vance did." I looked out across the horizon, where the city skyline cut into the morning light. You don't mess with a father's love. Not ever. And with that, I walked forward, not broken, not defeated, but ready for whatever came next. Because my story wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about legacy. And David's legacy would never die. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.